I was on a long drive the other day, and I just was thinking while I was driving. I thought to myself, all right, let's say the dome is real. Let's say there is a dome. If there is a dome, what are the properties of it? What's it made of? And once we learn that, what are the scientific implications? What would that change? What would that help us understand? So, to share my thought processes with you, let's just say there is a dome. I'm not going to try to convince you that there is a dome because I've never seen the dome myself, but I've also never seen the full Earth from space to know the shape. So relax. A lot of times when I get in flat Earth conversations with people, after they hear my presentation or watch my video, they say, "You've shown me nothing. You've shown me no facts, no proof." It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have CGI video to show you. Like you've presented, not you, but your team has presented CGI, really cleverly, well-produced CGI video to prove your point. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm a philosopher. I like to throw these ideas out there, have a discussion. So let's just say there is a dome. You don't have to believe there's a dome, but for this convo, we're just going to say, let's just say there is a dome. Let's just go with it. Let's roll with it. You don't have to get bent out of shape. We're just having a fun little conversation. So I've seen, Mark Sargent in interviews being pressed about the dome because after all, he presents enclosed Earth theory. And when they press him on it, he says, well, the question you should ask is who built the dome and why? Now, those are good existential questions to ask. But since Mark already answered those or provided those or tickled your brain with who built the dome and why, we're going to ask some different questions, ones that haven't been proposed before, or at least I haven't seen it. So what are the properties of the dome and what implications would that mean? So properties of the dome. Pull this up on screen here. Is it a giant magnet? Is it made of metal? Another element, substance? So imagine a floor and a ceiling with magnets, like these giant magnets in the ceiling and on the floor. How do they react? How do they behave together? Is the dome magnetic? Is it polarized for north or south, or is it some in-between neutral polarization? Does the ground have some form of magnetism that works in conjunction with the dome that creates all of the physics that we experience? So what I'm saying here is all the rules of physics are based on assumptions. And those assumptions don't assume that there is a dome. So if there is a dome and the dome is magnetic, and say that the ground is also magnetic, depending on what their polarizations are, whether it's positive, negative, like opposites attract, likes repelling, or some kind of neutral effect, what would that affect? How would that modify our physics and our understanding of things? Is the dome one polarization and the ground the opposite? Are they the same? Are they both neutral? Could that also be how the weather works? Maybe if there were magnets on both sides, or maybe it's not even magnetism as you and I understand it. Maybe it's a different kind of just field that creates the weather. Maybe that's how the weather works. We don't really know how the weather works. We think we do, and maybe we do with HARP and all the weather modification programs. But as we go on with this, you'll see that if there is a dome, they certainly know about it already. So would it help explain gravity? But I'm not saying gravity to the flat earthers, buoyancy, density. I'm not sure how it would affect buoyancy, but maybe it would. Maybe if the dome works in conjunction with the ground, it could have a way to cause everything to happen. So maybe it could explain gravity, buoyancy, and density. And we mentioned gravity, as all flat earthers point out, there's no test that definitively proves gravity. There's no unified field theory. And they want to have a theory of everything. Could the dome help provide the theory of everything? If there is a dome, it would change, especially if it had properties such as magnetic properties. Could it also affect the atmosphere? Could that dome working with the ground affect the atmosphere? And so I have this little picture here, the magnetized dome ceiling working in conjunction with the magnetized floor. And again, you could replace magnetism for some kind of force that we don't understand yet, that we haven't discovered yet. But just imagine if they work together, the dome and the ceiling. I'm sorry, the ceiling and the floor with some kind of working together. That would be neat. Now, is the dome reflective? Is it a giant reflector? So would that explain all the radar dishes? Could that explain the ionosphere? Because you hear about the ionosphere, it's like this mysterious place of all these ions that are charged, and during the day the sun heats it up, and so it's more reflective, and then at nighttime they're not as heated up, so AM radio could travel beyond states. I don't know. The ionosphere has always kind of had a magical property to it. And you wonder, okay, so during the day, can these satellite dishes work? How is it that satellite can work during the day if there is an ionosphere that affects radio transmission? Although I guess satellite beams may not be the same as FM and AM. And actually, FM does transmit at line of sight. All right, so but the point is, the ionosphere has always had a mystery to it. HARP works with putting holes. I guess it's in the ionosphere. I don't know. I'm just saying, if the dome was reflective, it may help explain the ionosphere, and it may explain that if it is a big reflector, it would help flat earthers explain why there are no satellites. Because a lot of times when you hear that the Earth is flat and that it doesn't spin, people are going to say, well, okay, then explain satellites. And the flat earthers will say, well, there are no satellites, which sounds insane, right? There are no satellites. And then it's like, okay, well, if there's no satellites, how am I getting DirecTV? How am I getting GPS? They'll explain GPS through the cell phone towers, but then explaining how you're getting to your DirecTV gets a little difficult. But then there's that video of the guy out there saying that all satellite dishes face south. I was recently in Baltimore and I noticed that all the satellites seem to be facing one direction. And in Florida, I also noticed they were all pointing in the same direction as well. But even then, the round earthers will say, well, yeah, that's because the DirecTV satellites are in a geostationary orbit. Geostationary orbit. It's like, if you find out that this isn't real, the geostationary orbit is like such a convenient excuse. It's clever. In a way, you really got to hand it to the science globers out there for coming up with some pretty fun excuses for a lot of things. And they may be right. Maybe the world really is a sphere, a rotating sphere that goes around the sun. But you already learned that in school, so this is the school of Johnny here. If the dome is reflective, if there is a dome and it is reflective, then what is the Very Large Array and all of these radars doing? Are they just reflecting signals off the dome? And if it is reflective, how much does that make Earth a gigantic auditorium? And I guess that would be an argument against it, because they say, well, if there was a dome, then every time we spoke, there'd be an echo. But then you're like, well, in a way, with resonance, there is some form of a vibration going on. Now, the vibration does come, I guess, from the actual thing resonating, but you kind of need to have that acoustical dome to even have that resonance, right? Or not. But Tesla and Hollow Earth theory, dude, there's just so much going on with this reflect. We could go for hours on just thinking if it's reflective or magnetic. You could do those on your own, and I'm trying to think how this would affect. See, if it's magnetic, we think of magnetism a lot more powerful than reflective. But if it's reflective, even that could have a powerful effect on all the natural phenomena. That one's up to you. Just wanted to throw that idea out there. Now I'm just going to read this one, because if there is a dome and it's reflective, what are they using the radars for? So you saw the picture of the Very Large Array and those other radar dishes. So usually you hear people say, so what if we find out the Earth is flat? What does it matter? Well, for one, you would go read the public explanation of things like the VLA, Very Large Array, and when it no longer makes sense if there is a dome, because they're looking into space, you would then wonder what the heck they're even talking about, right? So So this is what it shows on Wikipedia as the explanation for the VLA. Each of the massive telescopes is mounted on double parallel railroad tracks, so the radius and density of the array can be transformed to adjust the balance between its angular resolution and its surface brightness sensitivity. Kind of sounds like reflective and magnetic, right? Railroad tracks. Astronomers using the VLA have made key observations of black holes and protoplanetary disks around young stars. Protoplanetary disks. They discovered magnetic filaments and traced complex gas motions of the Milky Way at the Milky Way's center, probed the universe's cosmological parameters, and provided new knowledge about the physical mechanisms that produced radio emission. Okay. The VLA is a multi-purpose instrument designed to allow investigations of many astronomical objects, including radio galaxies, quasars, pulsars, supernova remnants, gamma ray bursts, radio-emitting stars, the sun and planets, astrophysical masers, I don't know what that is, black holes, and the hydrogen gas that constitutes a large portion of the Milky Way galaxy, as well as external galaxies. Yeah, so they're zooming in on the ceiling, and all those quasars they're seeing are like packets of carbon dioxide. In 1989, the VLA was used to receive radio communications from the Voyager 2 spacecraft as it flew by Neptune. If you don't believe space is real, that sentence is hilarious. The VLA was used to receive radio communications from the Voyager 2 spacecraft as it flew by Neptune. A search of the galaxies M31 and M32 was conducted in December 2014 through January 2015 with the intent of quickly searching trillions of systems for extremely powerful signals from advanced civilizations. So maybe, watch this though. See, to give this legitimacy, they're telling you space as a cover, because what they're really doing is bouncing signals off the dome, spying on all the civilizations that are beyond the ice wall, the Antarctic ice wall, right? So the Voyager 2, if we're on an infinite plane, so there really was a Voyager 2, and that Voyager 2 is traveling past all those additional continents after the ice wall, looking at all those advanced civilizations utilizing off-world technology, the breakaway civilization. So NASA actually is our friend in a way. They're spying on all those people outside of the ice wall. After all, they get all this funding to keep even this the very large array. I think costs $19 million, which actually isn't that much money when you look at those satellite dishes and imagine the employees and the facilities. $19 million is actually a pretty good price. They actually got priced pretty good, it seems, for that, if it was $19 million. Okay, so it has been used to carry out several large surveys of radio sources, including the NRAO VLA Sky Survey and faint images of the radio sky at 20 centimeters. The radio sky. In September 2017, recent, the VLA Sky Survey, VLAS, began. This survey will cover the entire sky visible to the VLA, 80% of the Earth's sky, in 3 full scans. Astronomers expect to find out about 10 million new objects with the survey, 4 times more than what is presently known. So all these poor astronomers are thinking that they're searching space. Meanwhile, the real data is going to the people in the know who are evaluating the reflections about these additional civilizations beyond the ice wall. Is the dome a projection screen? Is the dome a projection screen? Is it responsible for the blue sky projection during the day and the starry night dark display at nighttime? What if the planets, aka wandering stars, are really one of the fixed lights that broke off that roll around each night? So we don't know like the mechanism that causes the stars to turn every night, but imagine it being like a roulette wheel. And one of the fixed stars broke from the roulette wheel And you know, like roulette has, like, let's say there's like little curves and stuff, and it rotates differently each night. So maybe the planets are what we think are the planets. The wandering stars broke off. They're just lights that broke off, and they follow like this erratic pattern because they're no longer fixed each night. Could be if it's a dome. Although I think maybe if it's a projection screen, though, maybe it's just an Easter egg that's in there. I said in another video, Maze Runner, the film Maze Runner, I always felt like the pattern of the maze was metaphorically or symbolically explaining the patterns of the sky, of all the constellations and whatnot. The study of astronomy could be looking for some kind of a clue, some kind of an escape route, or some kind of pattern that's in the sky. Who knows? We don't know. I mean, you'll get the science version, but the science version is going to leave it out. Like, imagine if there are civilizations beyond the ice wall. And imagine they're really using the dome to spy on them or to explore other civilizations and to receive signal like the SETI. Maybe SETI is listening in on all the data that they're getting from beyond the ice wall. And we're told all this stuff about space and planets and whatnot, and it's all metaphorical for these different continents. You know, maybe every time they talk about Neptune, it's really referring to one continent. When they talk about Mars, another continent, Venus, and so on. And asteroids, and maybe when there's an asteroid shower or a meteor shower, it could be the people on the other side launching like a rock attack on our side of the wall. And they don't want you to know that those people live there, so, you know, we just burn up those asteroids. But they're not really from space. They're from angry people on the other side of the ice wall that are mad that we're spying on them and exploding nukes. Do nukes exist? Operation Fishbowl. If there is a dome, then that's a structure. And that really changes everything about reality if there's a dome. Because now we're in this like artificial environment, an enclosed earth. And then you begin to think of the moon and the sun as machines. You'll then start to buy that the flat earthers are saying, hey, you know, the sun and the moon really aren't, you know, the sun's not 93 million miles away. The moon's not really 250,000 miles away. After all, how can we zoom in so close with our P900 camera? And then you would see them as machines, not these natural, majestic objects that just happen to be there. You would then wonder, how does the sun and the moon work in conjunction with the dome, plus the dome and the floor, you know, having some kind of a way to, I don't know, some kind of force between the dome and the floor. And then you have the sun and the moon moving around the sky. Like the sun's like the heat machine, the moon is the cooling machine. And I used to wonder why there weren't more solar panels in Florida, because we're in the Sunshine State. But I finally bought some solar panels, and I found out why. While Florida is a sunny, hot state, we also have a lot of cumulus clouds. And my solar panels require direct sunlight, which was surprising to me. At least it helped explain why there aren't more solar panels in Florida. But I was like, wow, gee, you know, you would think the solar panels were just collecting the light, but they're actually collecting direct sunlight. I'm sure there's a good reason why that happens. But when I discovered that, I thought, And I like all these pictures of the moon and the sun being the yin and the yang, the night and the day. It makes a lot of sense. The dome, code words, the ionosphere, the Van Allen radiation belt, Operation Fishbowl, Operation Dominic, Dome, Dominic. You know, it's funny about Operation Fishbowl, Operation Dominic. Your Globe Earth friends that have heard you ranting and raving about flat Earth, and they kind of entertain the argument somewhat just for the amusement. They don't want to touch Operation Fishbowl, Operation Dominic at all. Like all the other stuff they play with, but when it comes to Operation Fishbowl, they're like, they just don't go there. And I want them to go there because for me anyway, just saying the dome is such a funny thing to say. We got these guys, they're shooting nukes at the dome. And what's interesting about Operation Fishbowl is that Tom DeLonge, I think that's the guy's name, he's from Blink 182. He's going on this big ET disclosure thing that aliens from space are out there. He does cover Operation Fishbowl, but from like a ufology perspective. So when you hear his perspective on Operation Fishbowl and then contrast it with the flat Earth interpretation of Operation Fishbowl is kind of interesting because even DeLong is kind of implying that there is some kind of a barrier out there. He's not going to call it a dome, but it seems that there is some kind of barrier, and even he admits it from a ufology perspective. I forgot what the name of the interview was where he was talking about it. I don't know, maybe research Tom DeLong Operation Fishbowl. But yeah, I already talked about how the ionosphere is mysterious, and the Van Allen radiation belt. I remember when I first heard about it in school, I remember thinking, so how did they get to the moon then, if there's this radiation belt? And when I was in school, I had a vested interest in space being real because I believed in UFOs and extraterrestrials and all that, and the secret space program. The secret space program probably does exist. They're just not going to space. They're going beyond the ice wall. As I've been through this whole process and seen a lot of the quotes that Neil deGrasse Tyson and others have made, I just wonder if are flat earthers ruining the fun, like ruining a good thing? I mean, if so, we're just not in on the gag. There's this whole nice universal worldview they've created where everything makes sense. It's a mechanistic worldview. It's a relative universe. They've made this whole model up. And along come these flat earthers saying, that's not real. Are we ruining it? Because if we are, it's just because we're not in on the gag. Like if someone sat me down and said, hey dude, yeah, it's all fake, but this is how society works. Okay. Everybody's job is fake, but we all need to earn money. So we all have to have careers, and we have to keep creating these jobs because there's really nothing left to do because we have the machines to produce everything, but got to keep people working because if people stop working, they'll start to realize there's a dome and start to realize that everything is flat, and they're not going to believe everything we told them. So you got to keep people busy all the time. So is saying it's flat, is that like telling someone about WWE wrestling not being real, or Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy? Because people that watch wrestling, they know it's fake, but they don't need you to tell them like, hey, that's fake, right? They're like, dude, why are you ruining the show? It's like telling somebody, hey, the good guys are going to win at the end of the movie. It's like, hey, thanks for ruining it. Yeah, no kidding. I enjoy the show. So if you enjoy the show of the spheres going around, sorry, I'm not trying to ruin that. It's just that I'm trying to understand the way things are. I'm trying to break free of the monetary matrix. I'm trying to get the machines to do all the work for us and live a leisure-full life. And I'm not on this nice NASA payroll that gets all this money to make up all this stuff. If you put me on the payroll, I'll shut up. You could buy me out. And then you wonder, are all professional occupations fake? NASA gives cushiony jobs to intelligent engineers that could do all the bookwork and learn all their maths and astronomies to keep them using their knowledge, chasing something that they'll never find. Poor astronomers keep thinking they're going to find this next discovery. They're looking at the ceiling. And it's like in George Orwell's 1984, it mentions in the theory and practice of oligarchical collectivism that you keep all the engineers designing weapons to destroy the surplus of goods created so that there never will be a permanent surplus. Because if there was, then people would have free time, and then they'd realize who are the puppet masters and string pullers. Earning a college degree, is going through the efforts to learn the jargon to confuse anyone that is not part of your world into thinking you're doing something more important than what they do. All the jargon, all the language. You can't understand what a doctor says. You can't understand what a lawyer says. They have all these word barriers to prevent you from understanding what they're doing. So I'm guessing there's like this assumed code of honor. It's really not. It's like a criminal code of really it's an honor amongst thieves of I won't call out your career as fake so long as you don't call out mine. And everyone creates their own job security, right? So no one calls each other out. Now, before you get all bent out of shape at me saying this, because people get bent out of shape when you point that part out, just think about all the fudged numbers, charts, and graphs you created on a PowerPoint in your life. So give me a break to justify your job. The machines have already replaced all of us. You use this air of authority. No, mine is real. It's important. No, you're making up. You're basically an obscurantant. You're obscuring stuff, making it so confusing that no one could realize that you're really not doing anything except inventing a new vocabulary. Obviously, ambulance and paramedics and all that is important work. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about all the frivolous stuff that exists out there. And the more frivolous it is, the more confusing they make it. And part of that is to create a barrier to entry so that people can't comprehend how to get in. This isn't geared at workers. This is geared at management. Anyone that's not actually doing real work and they're just inventing fake work that they actually did. And I guess what I'm also getting at is like in the book, The Fountainhead, it was explained that even at the time of the publishing, I think this book came out in like the 40s or the 50s, that they were preventing the architects from inventing or creating new ways to design architecture. And that they were influenced to only reproduce what was already created. So the main character was blackballed from the architecture field. The main character, I think his name was Rourke, was blackballed from the architecture field because he wanted to make his own designs instead of having to follow what the Greeks and Romans did. He wanted to be creative. He felt like he could make a better arch dome or a better skyscraper. And they didn't want his designs. They wanted to just keep reproducing what was already done. I mean, that could be the corporate cookie cutter. But I also think, when you look at how, I think they cause people to stop being creative. Because when you look at the inventors at the turn of the 20th century, all the neat stuff that they were able to do, like Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, all the scientists, they discovered so much. And then after World War II, it's like, whoa. And actually, especially after the 60s, they were like, oh, people got too smart. We got to dumb people down. And I guess Ayn Rand was figuring that out, and she wanted to unleash the creativity of people, just like Donald Trump wants to unleash the creative juices of capital, of the free market, by removing regulations and lowering taxes. So imagine an architect being prevented from being creative. Although I can see the importance of, like, if you owned an architecture company, you want to reproduce things that are tried and true, foundations that are buildings that aren't going to fall down, because that would be like the worst PR for your firm. But the cost of that is to limit people's creativity. Don't like that. It's limiting individuality. It leads to this slide. Make a better "Let's Say the Dome is Real" video than mine. I'm often criticized for not having a persuasive argument or important factual hard data argument, or you didn't convince me of anything kind of argument. And that's cool. And this doesn't just come from globe earthers. I get a lot of hate from flat earthers because I don't toe their party line. I'm an individual. I do what I want. This is the Jonathan Lippy channel, not the Flat Earth channel. I do whatever I want to do. I'm talking about a flat earth topic, the dome. I'm introducing new ideas to the viewer's mind. These are my thoughts. I don't have to follow your line, because nobody's going to ever accept me anyway, because I'm not a follower. I'm a leader. So make a better "Let's Say the Dome is Real" video than mine. My goal is to sprinkle new ideas into the ether for you all to think about and expand upon. Make a better video than mine. Take these concepts of a ceiling and a floor and the properties in between. Yeah, I'm not the sharpest scientist out there. I graduated college. I took science and physics and astronomy and all those classes. But I'm just a fun conceptual philosopher. Okay? And I really don't care if you criticize me. I'm just competitive. So I'm saying, I don't care about your criticisms. It's my thoughts. And I don't even know why I'm concerned with them, because I make this really for my subscribers. If you subscribe to this channel, you obviously you enjoy the videos I make. So I'm not yelling at you. And to understand how I think, I've always been motivated to corrupt the minds with critical thinking, dangerous questions, forbidden thoughts. I've always been drawn to the forbidden knowledge. I like to modify people's perception. A lot of people can only handle one roadmap. Since I was a child, that teachers and the parents were always like, no. The kids, they can't handle all this thinking. And I'm like, don't you want to encourage them to think? Don't you want to put all this information in their minds for them to process? But they wanted to limit it, put the blinders on, and make a really structured world where there is no free thought. I want a world of free thinkers. Now at the time, I was a child, so I was under the authority of the adults. But now I'm an adult. And I want to change that. I'm trying to create more free thinking people. People like to hear this stuff. They wish they could speak their minds. I don't know why you've all been frightened into not speaking your mind. And when I say corrupt the youth, corrupt the minds, I really don't want to corrupt the minds. I'm doing it in the way Socrates did it. Now, Socrates was killed by the powers that be at his time because they didn't like that Socrates trained people to critically think, to think alternative thoughts. And once they would believe him on the one persuasion, then he would flip it on them and get him to think in the other way. That's what being a philosopher is about. It's not having, this is how it is. It's considering everything. Sometimes when you try to create a model, then you want to stick to your model, but then that causes you to have to invent all these things like black holes and wormholes. You know, when you get so stuck on something, you end up creating fibs. I'm creating a fib here with the dome and the floor working together, but I'm admitting it. I don't have a real concrete model that I'm trying to sell. I'm trying to sell free thought. I'm trying to sell critical thinking. I'm trying to sell forbidden thoughts, dangerous questions. And does that mean that I want to eat from the forbidden fruit? Well, you know, it's like, it's funny too, because like the religion part, they always say, oh, if it's not from the established authority, it's from Satan. Satan's trying to deceive you. That's the powers that be trying to control your mind to prevent you from doing your own free thought. Secret societies, they're always presented as bad and evil. And it's like, what the secret societies are doing is they're asking the dangerous questions. They're allowed to critically think. They're allowed to have the forbidden thoughts. And the metaphor, the symbolism of the forbidden tree of knowledge, they just ate from it and said it was good and looked into it. You're told not to look. Why? Why are you not allowed to see? And if you want to think of it, think of the Wizard of Oz. You're supposed to sing that it's the wonderful Wizard of Oz. You're not supposed to look behind the curtain. So does the wizard deserve to remain the wonderful Wizard of Oz because of all the wonderful things he does? Was Dorothy and all them wrong for looking behind the curtain? Should they be ruled by some hidden figure? Should the puppet masters be allowed to continuously rule us in the shadows and secrecy? Get us to believe in all this fake stuff? To keep us occupied, looking in the wrong direction? To never really truly be free? Are those the ones that you're protecting? Are those people worth protecting? Maybe it is, because it does create a civil and orderly society. I just want my own personal freedom. If you want to remain locked up as a slave, that's cool. I'm just trying to get out of the rat race. And while I'm doing it, I'm trying to corrupt as many people along as I can with free thought. But like I said, if they pay my way, I'll shut up. As long as they're not paying me, I'm not going to participate. Science behaves like they have it all figured all out. And if they didn't figure something out, it's like all reality has to go through them first, through their rigorous debates that they supposedly have. And that rigorous debate is to make sure that this new information is consistent with the model that they created. And if it's something that they can't explain, it doesn't exist, it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant, or it's cast aside as unimportant. All the paranormal doesn't matter to them. Even though you're experiencing paranormal stuff all the time, that's why you're watching my channel, because you know something's not right, you know something's strange, you know something doesn't add up. They can't explain dreams. 1/3 of your life is spent in the dream dimension. They can give you an example, an explanation of the processes of the dream, but they can't really explain what the heck's going on there. Where do you go? I'm not even trying to knock their practice. It's just how hard it's enforced is the offensive part. All the names have been called. I'm at war with both science and religion. Science says I'm corrupting. The religion says I'm corrupting. Because I'm presenting ideas that aren't in their controlled worldview. It's like if they don't control it, it doesn't matter. It's wrong. It's bad. It's Satan. It's pagan. Or it's mystical when it comes to the scientists. Or it's non-scientific. Any alternative view that threatens their models, they're not trying to hear that. And they're trying to squash it. They're trying to destroy it, ridicule it, call it crazy. So only their perspective matters and no one else's, whether it's science or religions. That's wrong. That's just as nuts as religious people thinking that only their faction of a religion has it right. Have you ever seen like two Christians of different factions argue about whose version, whose interpretation is the right one? And they think that their team is the only one, the other one doesn't matter. Same with science. You got different factions. You got the quantum theorists making fun of the Einsteinians and the Einsteinians making fun of the Newtonians. You are allowed to ask questions. As long as they continue to tell us we live in a free nation, ask, philosophize, ask questions, say things. Why wouldn't you? Why people hold their thoughts inside and are afraid to speak their mind out loud? I don't know why. Why do you guys hold it all in? Why don't you speak it out loud? Why are you afraid of what people are going to think? Look at my channel. Look at how long I've been doing this. And I've been doing this way before YouTube. Now, sure, some people might not want to be seen with me anymore. But if they're hiding behind a facade about their whole life, of them being sophisticated, normal people, I really don't want to be friends with phony people anyway. What will my friends think of me? What will my family think of me? Well, what will they think of your real thoughts? What will they think about the real you? So they're your friends because you act like they act and have the same thoughts that they have? That's kind of creepy, dude. People will respect you if you stand for something. Otherwise, you're just a follower who will fall for anything. Why would you let someone else dictate your reality? But I say you are allowed to ask questions because people don't do things until they're given permission. For instance, and I've seen this many times, this is just the easiest example, and that's Edward Snowden. Everything Edward Snowden said, I mean, anybody that was paying attention already knew. But once the media started talking about it, it granted you permission to talk about surveillance, government spying, stuff like that. Even though it was always talked about back in the days of like the mafia films. But the Edward Snowden thing granted you permission. And then like, this is how the media is the shaman of what's real. On May 1st, 2011, they said, Osama bin Laden died, was killed. And it's like, oh, okay, now he's dead because they said so. Even though before it was like, oh, we never could find him. He always look. So they grant you permission. So here's where I'm saying, if you're not already subscribed, subscribe. Subscribing actually matters because it quantifies my influence. A lot of the stuff I present, they always try to say I don't matter, don't listen to him. Oh, what he says is irrelevant. I have no influence, blah, blah, blah. When you subscribe, it puts an invisible army of people behind me. It grants me relevance. And it says, not only that, this is what it does for you. It tells the world that people are interested in this kind of subject matter. The marketplace is always going to produce what the people demand. So if you demand more of this kind of stuff, the more of it you'll get. Now, obviously, once the corporations take control of this kind of information, they're going to water it down and confuse it all. But at least it'll start the motion of critical thinking. It says that we subscribe to critical thought. We subscribe to philosophizing, alternative views. And when you quantify that, then the marketplace has to provide it. And also the marketplace has to respect it. So help me quantify. So if you got this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. That's my pitch. So think about the dome. I barely scratched the surface. Imagine if the dome really is there. What are the properties and what does it matter? Feel free to take this idea and run with it. I don't even need any credit. Just ponder the dome. And also know that I've never seen a dome. I don't know if there's a dome there. I'm not saying there is a dome, but if there was, we should be allowed to think about it. We should be allowed to even have a conversation with friends like, hey, imagine if there's a dome. Everyone's going to laugh at first. Like, yeah, no, I know. It sounds crazy. You know, Stephen King under the dome. Woo! But what if there was a dome? What's it made of? And what are the properties of that? What would that matter? You know, if it was made of plastic, if it was made of wood, if it was made of metal, what kind of metal? All these different things would make a difference. And if there is a dome, how much that would change everything. How much it would help science. If there is a dome, it would help science explain things a lot better. And the thing is, with Operation Fishbowl, we know that they know. If there is a dome, this video is not a shock to them. They already know if there is a dome. Interesting. The dome. It's the funniest thing to say to people. The dome. All right, well, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.